What's up, everybody? It's my perfect draft top 4 picks edition here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, presented by FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook. I am Dan Bespris, and you can find me on social media at Dan Bespris. That's pretty straightforward. Last name is Besbris. Please like if you're on YouTube. Subscribe however you're listening to the show. That's a big one. And if you don't like it yet, perhaps we'll get you to come around by partway through the program. You may have seen it. You may not have seen it. A couple days ago, we did a My Perfect Draft episode where I did hard mode effectively. I eliminated the first 4 names in every single round, and I gave you choices that I would still make if my favorites weren't there effectively. So there really isn't a spot on the board where that should happen to you every time. You know, if you're in the first round, yeah, you're not going to have the first 4 picks, but every time after that, odds are one of those first 4 guys is going to be on the table. But for our exercise, we wiped him out. Today, we're going to go to easy mode. So we started hard. Now we go easy. You got to pick in the first 4 slots of your drafts. You can start with Nikola Jokic. You can start with Shea. You can start with Luka. You can start with Wemby. Whatever you want to do there. Already, you've got a massive leg up on the competition. But the difference in what we're going to do on this program versus what we did on the last one is we are going to treat this one like a snake draft. So instead of saying, oh, the first 4 picks are off the board or the first 4 picks are the ones that you're choosing from in every round, which wouldn't make any sense anyway, we are instead going to say, what would it look like if you lined up a snake draft where all the players would go 1 through 120 and you had access to a chunk of players close to where your actual pick would be. So your first pick, you got access to the top of the board. That's fine. Your second pick, you can just assume like the first 19 or 20 names are gone. They're gone. Those guys are not going to get back to you. You're going to pick from 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 28, and so on and so forth. Same thing with your third round pick, although obviously you can go as far down the board as you want. But the assumption is that basically everything before like 4 picks ahead of yours is gone. Let's begin. Here's my perfect draft picks 1 through 4, or pick 1 through 4, meaning you have a very early draft pick in your fantasy league. Lucky you. We're going to look for value plays from the first 10 rounds, assuming snake draft to locate our likely player pool. That's what we were just talking about. 10 rounds is dumb. I should probably only go 7 or 8 because once you get to about pick 75 to 80, guys just get grabbed from all over the board. I don't want to say there's no rhyme or reason to it because the rhyme and the reason is other people take who they like. But you don't have to follow our order here. These are just players that tend to be available around where I'm listing them. This next slide for the YouTubers is explaining what we already talked about. Today's exercise is to see how strong of a team we can make with the most likely options available to us at pick 1, 24, 25, and so forth with some wiggle room on each side. We're going to use Yahoo's 5th board. That's the October 11th iteration. Here we go. Round 1, Dan's draft to the pick inside the top 4, Nikola Jokic. Obviously, your honorable mentions are all 3 of the other guys in the top 4. I want Jokic because it makes building a fantasy team unbelievably easy. But if you wanted to go Wemby and shoot the moon, have at it. If you wanted to go SGA for also extraordinarily well-rounded, but, better free throw numbers, better defensive stats than Jokic, have at it. If you wanted to go Luka, who I wouldn't if you have access to Jokic because Luka's like Jokic, but without the amazing field goal percent. I don't know why you'd go that route. Maybe you want the extra 3-pointers. Seems weird, but perhaps you do it. All of those guys are perfectly reasonable options, and none of them require my explanation. Let's move on to the second round. So I've wiped out the first 20 names on the board, meaning we're picking from guy 21 onward. And if you're looking at the area right around that marker, Jalen Johnson would be my first choice of the remaining names on the board. I think Jalen's going to have himself a massive fantasy season. And my only actual concern with Jalen Johnson is whether or not his body holds up. It hasn't yet. So that is a point of concern. But he was number 21 last year and seemingly on the rise. I'm not worried that Kristaps Porzingis is about to take a bunch of what he does all on the floor. He's bigger and more a part of what this Hawks team is doing. With every season, he gets better. He hits a 3, he gets a steal and a half, he gets a block, he has a good field goal percent, he gets 10 rebounds, he's going to get near 20 points a game. He was at 19 last year, he was at 5 assists last year. The only knock on Jalen Johnson is that his free throw shooting is not out all that great. There's a chance that could get better. I'm not going to assume it does. But if you just take the numbers from last year and you remove the injured guys ahead of him. You pull out Kyrie, you pull out Dame, you pull out Halliburton, you pull out Tatum, you insert Kawhi Leonard. You probably can pull out Vooch. Suddenly, Jalen Johnson is number 17, and you didn't have to change anything about what he actually did. So Jalen Johnson, great fit with Jokic as well. Shores up some of the defensive, some of the block side, because you're getting a block out of your power forward. Non-center blocks are really nice to get when you have a low block guy like Jokic. Threes are problematic. Blocks are still not that great. But again, you haven't taken any guards yet, so who cares? And I don't, believe it or not, have an honorable mention for the second round because I don't really like the guys ranked 21, 23, and 24. And so anybody else would push you into the third round. Where for us, we will go with Josh Giddey, but two very solid honorable mentions in Derek White and Jamal Murray. And this one's going to come down a little bit to the way you want to construct your team. I like the idea of going Josh Giddey because, number one, he has first-round fantasy potential. I don't think he's going to get there, but at a usage rate of 25 down the stretch last year, he was a first-rounder. That's how effective he was at scoring and passing. He was more efficient than usual, and the steals and blocks were very high for him, but there's a chance he gets there, and he was even better than that in 9-cat. That was 8-cat. He was top of the first, or sorry, he was, flip it. He was mid-first round in 9-cat, and he was upper first round in 8-cat. There we go. I got my verbiage right. He also had 2 3-pointers a game down the stretch. That's still a bit of a problem. I only have 5 threes for my first 3 guys on the board, but my assists are amazing. I have 24-ish assists a game out of these guys. I'm sitting on something like 30 to 33 rebounds a game. Scoring is not great, but Jokic is very, very good. Giddey's going to not be all that great. Jalen Johnson's not going to be all that great, so that's probably an area I would need to look at. Steals are awesome. Getting almost a block out of a guard in Josh Giddey does help there, cover up Nikola Jokic issue. And at some point, we're probably going to got to find somebody that's, between 1 and 1.7 blocks per game. We didn't do it yet. And free throws are still not all that great. No one on my team is a helpful guy in that regard, but field goal percent is beastly. If you wanted to go with a backup option here, you could take Derek White, who's going to give you a bunch of the 3-pointers that we haven't looked at so far. He also gets out of position blocks. Assists are going to be good, not as good as Giddey. Rebounds going to be decent, not as good as Giddey, but a far better free throw shooter on low volume and a far better 3-point guy. So how you shake that out is up to you. And finally, Jamal Murray probably won't hit quite as many 3-pointers as Derek White, but he will have a better field goal and free throw percent impact than White. You're not getting the out-of-position blocks there, so that category becomes a little bit tougher to handle, but you are getting more scoring. So again, pick your poison a little bit. Either way, you're going to get a pretty good player. Fourth round guy, my lead horse there is Kawhi Leonard, because at this point, I've taken guys that I trust a lot. And if you don't want to go the Jalen Johnson route, if you're afraid of his health, you could go Giddey and Derek White, or Giddey and Jamal Murray, or White and Jamal Murray as your second and third round pair, and just don't take a guy that's pre-ranked between 20 and 24. In which case, that leaves you a very healthy team. Jokic, super healthy. Giddey, healthy. Derek White, healthy. Jamal Murray and Jalen Johnson, maybe a little bit less so. But if you can build a pretty solid games played foundational start, Kawhi Leonard has got to be your guy near the end of the fourth round. He was number 7 over the final 2 months last year. He actually, it's crazy to think he was one of the best fantasy players during the fantasy playoffs of anybody in the NBA. He didn't miss playoff games last year. He was number 3 in 9-cat leagues over the final month of the year. I don't think he's going to be quite that good this season, but he's a top 8 fantasy player, and you're able to get him near the back end of the front 50 because everybody assumes he's going to play 55 games, but he might play 62 games. And here's the beauty part. Even if he only plays 55 games, he still crushes an ADP in the late 40s. Anthony Davis played, 51 games last year as a top 5 fantasy play? He was number 39. We just don't need that much. Damian Lillard played 58 games last year before he got ruled out with one thing and then another. And he was number 8, which, I think Kawhi's probably going to be somewhere in that neck of the woods. And Dame destroyed that number. Do you think Kawhi can get to 58 games? I do. I think Kawhi by totals this year has a chance to be a second rounder. I think per game, he's almost a guaranteed first rounder. And you just like to take that shot. And again, I'm now discussing, and I don't know how they're going to fit together, and I don't know what the actual production is going to be exactly, but Jokic, Jalen Johnson, Josh Giddey, Kawhi Leonard. I legitimately have 4 guys on my team that can be first rounders in 9-cat. Legitimately. Least likely of them to be a first rounder in 9-cat's probably Jalen Johnson, which is crazy to think. Although odds are he does finish probably ahead of Josh Giddey. But like fantasy stat set, endpoints, all that stuff. And I know Kawhi is another well-rounded guy, but let's say you get the good iteration of Kawhi. Helps free throw a lot, which this team needs. Steals, great. Blocks, fine. Scoring is going to be an uptick, which this team needs. Threes are fine. Just kind of keeps them level there. Rebounds, solid. Assists are already good. So the fact that Kawhi is going to be probably around 4, who cares? Like, this team is a juggernaut if these guys stay upright. If you don't want to go Kawhi, if you're feeling too nervous about that, you can go Deni Avdija, who's another big-time upside play. He's another guy where you're like, yeah, I mean, if things broke right, then he could be a first rounder. And he was down the stretch last year. And I don't think he's going to have the usage he had down the stretch. And I don't think he's going to have the shooting percentages he had. But it's another 4th-round guy that we've seen sustain a first-round run. Wild stuff. 5th round, Cooper Flagg at 52. And I'll just preface my assessment of this with he probably isn't going to make it to the 5th round. I get it. I know. You guys always respond to the story. Look, he's pre-ranked 52. There are going to be some drafts where he makes it to the 5th round. Not going to be all of them. It will be some. If you want to take Cooper Flagg in the 4th round, I'm fine with that. If you want to see if maybe Kawhi falls to the 5th, I don't think Avdija. I think Avdija is the least likely of those guys to fall to the 5th round, but I guess you never know. Flagg and Deni probably going not too far from one another. Kawhi is certainly the most likely of them to fall because people are afraid of him. If you don't get any of those guys, if Cooper Flagg doesn't fall to the 5th round and you did, let's say you went Kawhi or Edey in the 4th round, your backup options in the 5th are to go and get a center. Because right now you've got Jokic at center, Johnson a power forward, Giddey, whatever you want to put him at, Kawhi, wing, Flagg. If you can get him, wing. If you can't, Miles Turner and Jalen Duren would be my backup options in the 5th round. I'll go and get a center. Miles Turner is a beginning of the 5th round guy. Jalen Duren is an end of the 5th round guy. But again, you have a first 4 pick, so you're going to have basically your choice of anybody in the 5th round because you'll have the first pick of it. And yeah, someone might reach down and take Cooper Flagg early. I get it. But odds are most of the guys ranked between 49 and 60 are still going to be on the board when it gets to you with the first pick of the 5th round. So Miles Turner, solid enough. He'll probably be a top 50 center. Shores up our blocks issue, adds some scoring and threes out of a center spot, which actually from this particular team, he's a really good fit. I know. Seems nuts because, like, why would you go and do that? More of a roto thing, I suppose, but 2 blocks, 2 threes out of a center. And this team doesn't need the field goal percent. You're getting good center stats without the rebounds and the field goal percent, but this team is way overloaded in that stuff. And if you don't want to go the Miles Turner route, you can go the more traditional center route with Jalen Duren, who I think is actually going to be a top 50 center also this year. I know he wasn't last season, but second half he basically was. And he'll give you gigantic rebounds again. Not as much scoring, but good defensive stats, big field goal percent, which you don't really need, but you are going to need another center at some point, and he would sort of fit that mold if you need it. He is very much my least favorite of these 3. Flagg would be the most fun. Miles Turner's the guy that's the good fit play. The other guys going in the 5th round that you could consider would be like DeMar DeRozan because you get scoring, but it does deal with our 3-pointers issue. Kind of hurts that. Helps with free throws. That's an area where this team needs help. If you don't want to go DeRozan, I don't think I would take the shot on Lauri Markkanen. I don't think Vooch is going to have a great year. That's probably the spot. Or you hope you get Darius Garland and then you hope that he's healthy. It's also worth mentioning, by the way, JJJ got ruled in for a preseason game right before I went on air for this show. So he now is a possibility as a late 3rd, even though his pre-rank is 38. Technically, that makes him an early 4th round guy. But he's a guy that we can look at in the 3rd round, and we'll talk about him when we do our show on who to take in the middle of rounds, who to take if you have a pick at the end of the round, so on and so forth, while we do it kind of snake draft style. Guys, if you've been enjoying all this stuff, I know I'm cranking it out at a ridiculous pace and my voice is tired and my fingers are tired because I'm doing all the threads now on social media. First of all, follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris. That's where I'm going to be doing so much stuff during the regular season faster than I could get it out on podcast form. So Twitter's a big deal. It's Dan Besbris. But also, if you guys have been enjoying this stuff, if you guys are winning because of me, I would kindly ask you check out my Patreon. I set it at the lowest number they would allow, $1. That's the lowest they would let me set it at. I tried to set it at like 49 cents. They said no. My thought process here is I gave myself 3 years. I'm just letting you guys behind the curtain. For a long time, I was like, I don't really want to talk about the exact timelines, but I will, because screw it. You guys can know. When I started Old Man Squad last year, I said, I'm going to do everything completely free for 3 full NBA seasons and then assess and see where I'm at financially. And I'll tell you guys right now, if I can get to a point where the advertising dollars on my shows, plus the Patreon account, cover the cost of our nanny and whatever other childcare, like you got to make donations to schools and stuff like that, I'll do this free forever. I don't need to be a net positive for our family. That's my wife's job. She's the physician. My job is to be the work-at-home parent, the backdrop for when kids need basically anything, and they need a lot of stuff, and also be able to cover the cost of childcare help when I need it so that I can do something fun and not just sit at home and wait for my kid to catch a cold. So whatever you got, great. If you got $1, fantastic. If you don't, also fantastic. I'm still going to do the same stuff, but consider it. It's patreon.com/oldmansquad. I don't know how anything works over there. I'll admit I set it up in a bare bone structure. There's one post that basically just says, you don't get anything here, because everything's for free. Google Sheet, where I've got all my ranks, is in the show description as well. Just scroll down a little bit. You'll see all the links there. That's where I've got my ranks. That's where I've got the Yahoo pre-ranks. It's where I've got the ADPs and changes and all that good stuff. And it's where I'm going to have all my schedules and replacement level players and pickups and stuff like that as the season goes too. Thanks for checking it out. Hit that subscribe button. Let's go to player number 6. OG Anunoby. Love where he's falling if you have an early pick. Number 72 is his pre-rank. So he is often still floating around near the end of the 6th round because people don't really want to reach for OG because he feels kind of boring as like a high steals, decent threes, fairly well-rounded, but not super exciting guy on a Knicks team where I think everybody's kind of afraid. And I'm afraid too. But OG's a guy that he gets his steals and his blocks when his minutes were 33. He gets them when his minutes are 36. It hasn't really changed him all that much. I think his scoring probably takes a little bit of a hit this year, but overall, that doesn't impact his rank nearly as much as if the steals went away. Like if the steals go back to 1 or something dumb that they've really never been for him, yeah, his rank would crash, but I don't see that happening. And so OG's a nice fit with this team as well. This team is already a strong steals team. You might as well just build on top of that. The team needed 3-pointers. He fits there as well. And guess what? If you're feeling like this team is too overloaded on the bigger, wingier side, like let's say you didn't get Josh Giddey, or let's say you didn't get Cooper Flagg and you ended up with a big man in the 5th round, you can pivot because there are 2 pretty good guards near the end of the 6th round as well in Peyton Pritchard and Andrew Nembhard. Nembhard, not as much of a 3-point guy, more of a steals and assists guy, so maybe not the greatest fit for this team that's already very strong in those categories. Peyton Pritchard, however, a very good fit with this team. Gives you threes efficiently. You need scoring. You need threes on this team. You don't need that many assists even out of a guard. You need a guard that's going to hit his free throws, which is a good thing for Pritchard as well. Maybe he's the best fit. Any one of these 3 guys, in my opinion, is a rock-solid option when you're picking towards the end of the 6th round. And by the way, I didn't do 3rd-round reversal in this particular draft because most engines don't have it. But you know the one that does? Fantrax.com/oldmansquad. Look, that's in the show description as well. Fantrax.com/oldmansquad is where you can sign up and play fantasy basketball at a place that just understands full season fantasy basketball. It's simple. Full season fantasy basketball, full season fantasy anything is just better at Fantrax. As soon as you get used to the UI, you're rolling, baby. That's what you want. Sign up today. It's free. Just check it out. Use that link I just mentioned. Have some fun over there. All right. As I'm talking, it sounds like Mark Williams is getting closer to playing 5-on-5, so that's good out of Phoenix, but we don't have to worry about that on today's show. 7th round guy is Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl. I really want to. There was one graphic I did for a show a few years ago where I put Jakob Poeltl's head on all of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm truly surprised that this hasn't been a bigger thing. It feels right to me. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle is maybe it's just too long of a nickname. In any event, 7th round is a big man treasure trove. You got Mark Williams in this round as well. He is the riskiest of the bunch. You got Poeltl, you got Rudy Gobert, and this again is a spot where you can make kind of a judgment call. I like Poeltl the most out of those guys because I like his mix of categories on a team that's extremely well-rounded. However, this particular team, if you somehow manage to get all the guys that I've listed here without having to go to any of the backups, doesn't need Poeltl's steals. And so it might actually make more sense to go to a guy you think might be ranked a little bit lower in Rudy Gobert, who both those guys had about the same negative impact free throw this last year. Both those guys were good at field goal, blah, blah, blah. Like, you don't need Rudy's field goal impact on this team, but you do need his block and a half. So maybe Gobert is just a better fit for this club. But still, again, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think if you just take wins wherever you can find them, ultimately you'll be able to move those guys for someone that fits better if you wanted to. Or you can just rack up really good players and cruise through the regular season. Like, this team's going to win a ton of regular season games. It might not win the fantasy playoffs without making some tweaks to improve 5 to 6 categories while eroding 2 or 3 others. But this team's going to win 6-3 and 7-2 a lot during the regular season. So Jakob Poeltl, solid center you can get around 75, who's probably going to be more like a top 60, 65 per game guy. Rudy Gobert, also available in this same range. I also think he's going to be inside the top 70 per game. And then if you want to take the swing, Ausar Thompson is going in the later parts of the 7th round, which, again, you have access to the whole round because early pick, odd-numbered round. You have the first pick of the 7th round, so take anybody down the board you like. I'm not quite as high on Ausar Thompson as others are. I like Amen Thompson's situation in Houston, obviously, a lot better. He's going to be point guarding it up for Houston, where Ausar Thompson is still not that. This is still Cade's team. He's not a ball handler on that team yet. Maybe he will be down the line. I think he's more of a bruiser for this club right now. And I don't know how much inside the top 70 a bruiser is going to go. Top 50 feels like the apex, and it's going to be built on the shoulders of massive defensive stats, which, okay, great. I do need blocks, but I don't need his assists if you think that's going to be a thing. I don't mind taking the guy who's slightly lower ranked in like a Poeltl or a Gobert, if that's the way you think it's going to turn out, because I do think that this team probably needs the shot blocking and the rebounding more than the steals that Ausar gives you. Jokic is at 1.5 and a half. Jalen Johnson's 1.5 and a half. Giddey's up near 1.5. Kawhi's near 1.5. OG's at 1.5. I mean, this team's a steals juggernaut that has no real need for one of Ausar's greatest attributes. So fit-wise, I don't think he makes a ton of sense here, but he is a late 7th round pick you could look at. And he's a guy in there. And Christian Braun's in this round as well. I didn't throw him in the mix here because I think he's priced out a tad in the 7th round, but break-even propositions are not the worst thing in the world. 8th round is a tough one. The guys I like in the 8th round are pre-ranked 92 and 93, so it's not clear that either one of them is going to get to you at 96. I think if either one of them does, it's probably more likely to be John Collins, but it's also possible they both do because this is an area of the draft where everybody else is going and doing their big swing hunting. They're just swinging their wiener all the way through the forest and seeing what it hits. And meanwhile, ultra boring dudes call this the old man squad round. The 8th round, you got Cam Johnson, who has a true old man style game. I know he's not that old of a dude, but high efficiency scorer with some steals is old man-itis, but he doesn't score enough for people to take notice. So it's like teens to high teens in points, but good field goal percent, great free throw, nice threes, which this team obviously needs. Or if Cam Johnson is off the board, you can go with another guy that just won't hurt you anywhere. That's John Collins. Fit-wise, again, he's not the greatest fit for this team because it's already a pretty big ball club. And if anything, this particular club I'm building needs the scoring and the threes and the free throws more than what John Collins has. But also, again, you might not get these top 8 choices. You might have had to slot in a small guy instead of, I don't know, let's say you didn't get Josh Giddey. You went Jamal Murray there. Okay, your rebounds are not as strong. Your assists are not as strong. You went Derek White instead of Josh Giddey. Your rebounds and your assists not as strong. Maybe you needed a little bit more rebounding. Let's say you went Peyton Pritchard or Nembhard in the 6th instead of OG Anunoby. Maybe you need the big man stats a little bit more. So there's ways to kind of mix and match where I don't want you guys overthinking, the team needs this a little bit more than this. Just get a guy. Get the guy that's good. And both these guys, I think, are going to have pretty good years. This one we may need to make a little bit of a tweak to because news broke right before I came on air that Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be ready, most likely, to start the season. He's playing in a preseason game, so I would assume he'll be ready to go next Tuesday. If he's playing tonight, when I record this on Wednesday, this show is airing on Thursday, I think, I still like Santi Aldama at 100, but I would flip the two, the one that's the primary and one that's the backup here. Aldama is no longer the primary. Aldama is now the backup at 100. And instead, my preferred pick is basically the first pick of the 9th round, and that's Onyeka Okongwu, who's pre-ranked 97th. That does make him technically the first pick of the 9th round. You should have your pick of him. People aren't really that interested in Okongwu this year, but they probably should be because he's going to just chunk along and be a really solid center. He was number 60 last year in about 28 minutes a ball game. And I know what you're thinking, Dan, with Kristaps Porzingis there, he's not going to play 28 minutes a game. My answer to that is, you're right, sometimes. How many games do you think Kristaps is playing this year? 55? 58? What do you think Okongwu is going to do in those 25 starts? He's going 30 plus. So what about his other 45 games? 25, 26? So actually, this season might look a lot like last year, but like Morse code version instead of big bad line, big good line. It's like beep, 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 beep. He's going to have a fine game, and then he's going to have a fine game, and then he's going to have a great game, and then a fine game, and then a great game, and then a fine game, because it's going to be when Porzingis isn't there that he goes huge, and he's going to be okay enough even when KP's there. So I think Okongwu is like a top 105 guy when this team is fully healthy, which means you can draft him in the 90s, and you're going to have about break-even value. But when Kristaps is out, just look at what he did the final 2 months last year when they finally pulled the plug on Clint Capella. He was a third rounder, 16 and 11 with a steal, a block, a 3 on 56-81 splits. That is beast mode center. Give him a third of a season at top 30. Give him 2/3 of a season around 100. He's going to finish near 60 to 70 again, just like last year. So Okongwu, a sneaky value. It's going to be an annoying path to get there, but it's going to be a win. And now with JJJ back, the value on Aldama is a little bit smaller. I don't think he's going to be top 60, 65 like Okongwu. I think you're probably looking at more like top 80 range for Santi. Still a guy I like in the 9th round, but not quite as much as about an hour and a half ago. And the 10th round. And this one, again, like the stupid part of the exercise, because once it gets to pick 85 or 90, everybody's just grabbing whoever they like. But here are some names I like that have a late pre-rank. Toumani Camara. I've talked about him 80 times on this podcast during the offseason at this point, so I don't know that I need to go into excruciating detail again on Camara. I just think he's a guy going late in the 10th round that has 6th, 7th round appeal. He's going to be good this year. If he improves at basketball, that's just gravy. I don't need him to get better. I just need him to do basically what he did at the end of last year, and I'll be totally satisfied. He was top 50 to 75 range for the final 25 games last season. Great. Let's keep that going. If he gets better, amazing. He is one of my favorite late guys, sleepers, breakouts, whatever you want to call him. It's all nomenclature. It doesn't matter. Just get Toumani Camara. And if somehow he gets nabbed out from under your nose, other guys that are going pretty late that are pretty cool in that same range. Donte DiVincenzo doesn't have quite the Camara upside, but again, with Nickeil Alexander-Walker gone and Mike Conley, the beard just a little grayer, kind of like mine. If you look in the camera, you're nice and close to the beard. It's pretty bad. I think Donte DiVincenzo has, 80-ish range appeal. Tobias Harris, the most boring man on earth, he'll probably be a top 100 guy. Zach Edey, I think, probably has the highest per game upside of maybe any of these guys we've talked about, but he's going to be out to start the year. And JJJ coming back before him doesn't make his life any easier. He's a guy I would only look at in then probably more like the 11th round if you have 3 IL slots. So if you don't have a ton of injured slots, don't take somebody who's hurt to start the year. That's a terrible idea. Focus instead on the other ones. Obviously, try to get Camara if you can, and you might have to take him around sooner because I've been yelling about him so much. This show is also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. They've got the Portland Trailblazers season win total at 34.5. I think they go over that mark, even in a difficult Western Conference. I think it's going to be a pretty good year for Portland. Drew Holiday kind of steering the ship for the first time. They'll have a little veteran leadership there. They need to replace some scoring. That's true. But I think the Denny Avdija growth, the Shaedon Sharpe growth, the Donovan Clingan growth, and maybe Jeremy Grant will make it through part of a season. I don't know. But I think the Blazers are going to be fine this year. I lean slightly to the over. Not a bet that I would make, but that's what they got over at FanDuel. And the FanDuel Sportsbook, our proud presenting sponsor here at Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Check out my $1 Patreon if you like what we're doing here. It's Patreon Old Man Squad. Fantrax Old Man Squad is our link over there if you want to play fantasy basketball at a fresh new spot. And if you download the HOF app today, use promo code SQUAD, and that'll help you with your sports betting. And I know some of you out there are into that sort of thing. Why not use a free tool? You can use it free for a week just to see how it works. It takes all this data and it gives you expected outcomes, and you use that to make smarter wagers. Our code, again, is SQUAD. Download the HOF app on iOS or Android today, or go to hofapp.com, type in SQUAD. You get a full week for free, and if you love it, let it ride. We're using Vegas expressions there. Let it ride, and you get half off your first month after that. And just use it while you're crushing, man. It's simple enough. HOF is the name of the app, or hofapp.com. I am Dan Besbris on social media, doing a lot of stuff over there these days, so I hope you'll check me out, DANBESBRIS. Old Man Squad is the network feed. We got 3 to 4 shows and shorts dropping every day on the YouTube page. If you don't like dealing with the YouTube nonsensory, love that you guys still listen to the traditional pod, because actually the advertising dollars there pay more. And if you don't want to do the Patreon, just go listen to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify after the fact. It's probably donates about the same amount every month or more. Much obliged. Subscribe on the way out, and we'll see you for the next one. We're going to do another one of these shows. We'll do the middle. We'll do the end. It's a 3-part. We already did hard mode. This was easy mode. Now we're going to do medium mode, and then we'll do medium hard mode. We'll figure it out. Doesn't matter what I call it. Then it's mock time. We got to do like a 55 mock sprint, because season starts in a few days. What the hell happened? I'm Dan, and I'm out. Thanks for watching.